I think if you're an artist, like a visual artist, I think you would really appreciate what they did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you appreciate probably the music. The music is just phenomenal for every single scene.
God.
You know,
It's just constantly as well. Like, it's constantly brilliant.
There's no scene that it didn't fit.
The visual design as well, the levels, they're fantastic. And I'm just going to say, the lack of minimap, good. Made me appreciate it.
Didn't need it.
Levels aren't big, you know? Like, world map could be better. I want some, like, you know, cleared and I want some markers and shit. But mini-maps in levels, I'm okay not having that.
They didn't even really have names over certain areas. Like, they had, like, a little thing, but
that's true.
You know, just a name. So I can...
Yeah, Banana, you need to play it. I think it's a game Banana would really like. I think it's absolutely made for Banana.
I'm sure I would, but at the moment, I don't have a controller.
Oh yeah, not immediately, but at some point.
Sans elle, clair, obscur, trouble de rature, courbera et frêle. Clair, obscur, guardé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle. Oh, clair, obscur, trouble, rature. Clair, obscur, guardé aux peintures. Clair, obscur, trouble de rature, courbera et frêle. Clair, obscur, guardé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle. Clair, obscur, trouble de rature, courbera et frêle. Clair, obscur, guardé aux peintures, trouvera sans elle.
Before we begin, the Gamers Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome to yet another version of the Gamers Advocate podcast. We're joined with AMKomnenos.
Sound like we know what we're doing.
Yeah. We're joined with AMKomnenos, Banana Hammock Republic, and myself, Legion. And we're going to go over some games because we're going to talk about mods. There are a lot of mods that have converted into games. I'm thinking of that. Off the top of my head, I thought I was going to remember it, but it's that.
I'm so sorry. This is so sketchy. This whole thing up until now, it's so rough.
You know what I'm
talking about? Game that you forgot in a previous episode.
Dadgummit. Yeah, it's called.
What are we talking about?
It was we're talking about mods and how mods can.
It was the.
Thanks, Bub.
I can't remember what the name was, but I do remember this exact thing happened. Where Legion brought it up. Neither of us knew what the fuck he was talking about. He spent like 8 minutes trying to remember what the name of the game is and eventually looked it up.
Yeah, I'll look it up again real quick so we can edit
Forgotten
this out.
City.
Is that it? Forgotten City?
Yeah, it's based on Skyrim, not Oblivion.
It's based on Skyrim. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we did wrong the first time as well.
Yep.
Instead of the Oblivion engine, it's the Skyrim engine.
So I keep thinking that it's the Oblivion engine mainly because I was told over and over that was the Oblivion engine. I was like, this doesn't look Oblivion. And that's probably why, because in my head, I still think it's Oblivion. But Forgotten City is basically a Skyrim mod. And it got turned into, using the Skyrim engine, turned into its own game. And it's highly accredited. And a lot of people like that one. And it usually goes on sale quite a bit. But a lot of people do enjoy that. It's a little puzzle game. Has a good story behind it. I've seen a lot of playthroughs of it. I haven't actually played it myself. But mods can enhance a game. They can definitely detract from gaming. There's definitely sites that are devoted to a certain type of mod because they're not appropriate everywhere.
Hot coffee mods?
Exactly. So, would you all have any experience with modding or any opinions of mods?
I think you just did talk about something very interesting, which is those games that became beloved in and of their own right, that started off as mods. I was just thinking, it's actually a whole iconic set of them. And the ones that came to mind very quickly was Counter-Strike, which I believe started as a multiplayer mod for Half-Life. The Stanley Parable, which oddly enough I believe is also a mod for Half-Life, as peculiar as that sounds. Dota 2, which was a mod for StarCraft?
Or Warcraft 3.
Warcraft 3, thank you very much. And DayZ, or DayZ, whatever you would call it. Days, I call it, which is a mod for Gary's Mod, which I believe at that point is then a mod of something else. So you actually have this wonderful world actually of modding, which has its whole own ecosystem and infrastructure of games that came out of it, became games in their own right, and end up standing on their own 2 feet. So we have this entire range of mods, from texture replacers, or remove grass in Oblivion so Com can play it on his 2006 PC, all the way through to the Stanley Parable. And that's pretty amazing, because it gives you an idea of just how big and broad this whole field actually is. And then there was a story of that kid one time who made a mod for Skyrim as an application for a job at Bethesda. I can't remember exactly what that was, but that is odd and bizarre. And I don't think that really exists outside of this. You have fan films and fan fiction and things like that. I don't think they ever take on that love in the community in the way that modding does. There's something about gaming, very particularly, and the creative community within gaming that's taken a very unique space in this world. I think it's a wonderful thing. So modding, yeah, big thumbs up all around for it.
I think it's funny because we've kind of talked about the equivalent form of modding in other episodes where we talked about fanfics, and that's essentially modding for a book series or maybe a movie, and you're kind of tweaking the script. And there doesn't seem to be that same possibility within those communities. So we talked about George R.R. Martin and how he feels about fanfics, and that doesn't seem to be a unique point of view. There are a lot of people who are like, I mean, maybe they tolerate fanfics, but they don't endorse it. And within the video gaming community, it does seem like there are developers who genuinely embrace the mods, and they work with the modding community, and they want there to be a modding community. And Bethesda is a great example because they always build their games in a way that modding is an option. You don't really see that in other media. It seems like they're like, no, we did this. You go do your own thing. Leave our stuff alone.
Yeah, you feel like there's more of a tolerance for fan art, a tolerance for fan literature. Even in many gaming shooters, there's a tolerance for modding. We're happy it takes place, it keeps players engaged with the game and things like that. But a lot of systems are very, very closed. If you go and look at the mods that exist for Mass Effect, I bet there are people out there who would love to mod Mass Effect. It seems it's just very, very hard to do. Dragon Age Origins in particular, there's a few companion mods where people have made whole characters, but they're so few and far between, I'd imagine, because the architecture just doesn't allow for it. But when you have something like Bethesda with their much more open policy, the releasing of the modding tools to the public, and how comprehensive those modding tools actually are, their relationship, I think, with modders is almost different to just about anyone out there, except for maybe Valve and that Source engine, which, if we go back, is where a lot of these earlier big mods came from. And just very quickly, DayZ was not Gary's mod. It was a mod for Arma 2. I misremembered that.
Remembered it better than I did.
Okay, I don't know that Dota was technically a mod as much as it was a custom map.
Tell us in the comments.
I don't know where we draw the line. But that's another one. Like custom maps were something that Warcraft 3, StarCraft implemented and gave players the ability to kind of create their own campaigns and their own stories. And people have done some really, really creative things. People recreated was it the Lord of the Rings Escape from Moria? That sequence, I remember playing in a Warcraft 3 map. Everybody kind of plays a hero, and you kind of work your way out of the dungeon. And it was interesting. I don't remember succeeding a lot. It was very difficult, and there were definitely some heroes that like, oh, well, fuck, I got Mary. I guess I'm just going to watch other people succeed in this one.
Have fun, guys. I'll be over here.
Yeah.
Hiding. That actually, maps is a big one. Because when I think back, most of the modding, inverted commas, that I did when I was a kid wasn't going to be anything complicated. So I think the only game I would have modded on PC was probably Morrowind. And that was relatively easy. I can't remember if tools like Rybash existed at the time when I was first doing it. I think that might have been more Oblivion and later. I think Morrowind, you did have to do a bit more manually. But there were good community forums. People talked about how you did it. There were guides to like simple mod setups. Here's a version of Morrowind Enhanced if you want 30 or 40 mods, and someone literally would walk you through in what order the ESPs had to be and things like that. Any other games, I think it was just far too complicated at the time. But maps and custom maps and things like that, yeah, I can remember doing loads of those. Particularly games like Total War. I seem to remember Total War 2, there were quite a few total conversions for. Lord of the Rings is when you said that just made that come to mind. I don't think I've ever played it, but I can seem to remember just Total War 2 there being a full conversion for Lord of the Rings. There was a full conversion for A Song of Ice and Fire. There was a full conversion to put it in ancient Rome, despite the fact that there was already Rome Total War. You know, not everything has to have a good reason, but this whole world of sort of minor modding, or it's a sort of second form of modding, exists too. And we've been doing this with games essentially for as long as games have been around, I think. And do we go as far back as when you think to people back in the 1980s programming their own games out of magazines into their systems, because that was the only way to get the game onto your system, and making little changes as they went? Were they modding? So modding has this long and beloved history actually in gaming, which I guess is where all of the love for it today comes from. It's got 30, 40 years of goodwill and a culture that we're all a part of. Pretty much, no matter how much we game, even to the point that things like Skyrim now has its mods on PlayStation. So you don't actually have to really overthink this anymore, which was always one of the big points against why I never played Oblivion on the Xbox, was I couldn't resist the modding. So I had to get on the PC.
Yeah, and a lot of the mods that, speaking specifically of, Skyrim and Oblivion and stuff, they would optimize the files to make it run better, because, Bethesda's notorious for having an unoptimized release or even a patch.
Great job with the remaster, guys, by the way.
Yeah, I do appreciate the remaster. There's a lot of things about it that I think a lot of people who were introduced to Oblivion first were a little uncomfortable with it, because the leveling system is just a little different. Everything else is the same. It just seems like there's things here and there, and the leveling is kind of like a marriage between Morrowind and Skyrim. And so I like that. And I was like, okay, I feel more comfortable in Oblivion than I ever did before, because Oblivion's my least favorite of the three. But I kind of like where it's at now. But both Morrowind and Skyrim, Oblivion, all three of them were made on an engine that Bethesda created. So they were able to kind of share that engine code and the creation kits that came with that. So that way it was moddable. And I like to believe that they kind of did that intentionally to kind of keep it relevant over the years, but I don't know if they may have just fell into that too.
I did read that a large part of the way that the Bethesda engine actually works is because they wanted it to be relatively easy for their own designers to use, to the point that their own designers could throw level ideas together quickly, so that if you had an idea, you could just give it a go. You could prototype it in a couple of days rather than build something over 6 weeks and then actually have that be wasted labor. There was, no, we can hammer this out in 3 days. And if it's great, brilliant, we'll work on it for 6 weeks and actually refine it. And if it's trash, then okay, well, it's 3 days. That happens. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and it's risky because, like, Unreal, for instance, is notoriously difficult to mod. And that's why, it's going to be difficult going forward if they move forward with the Unreal Engine. And imagine all the people with the next Elder Scrolls game who are going to be looking forward to that, but saying, I wish I could mod this game. Yeah, you got a great game that came out, and that's, looks great, but will it be relevant 10 years from now, just like Skyrim is? Who knows?
I'd be very surprised if they move forward with Unreal fully. You might see something like this. What do they call? Is the term like bootstrapped or something? The version that they have now, which is the engines sort of jankily shoved together. You might find something like that, or you might find them just working on their own engine and trying to improve on that if they can. It feels as though it's very much stuck where it is. But I can't see a situation where they just do away with that because of how much a part of the identity of these games modding actually is.
Everybody's going to look at them because it's going to be developers like CD Projekt Red have designed their own for the purposes of modding. Didn't go so well. You know, the Red engine was not beloved. They gave the code out. A lot of people have made mods. It's just not approached as often as just playing the game vanilla. CD Projekt Red has made the game relevant without needing mods, you know, but a lot of times, you know, you will get a modding community for specifically The Witcher or Cyberpunk, but playing it vanilla is, you know, nobody has a problem with.
So I was going to say, I'm curious with the engine that Bethesda has developed, because I think a lot of the reason that studios will kind of keep that close to the chest is they don't want competition kind of stealing their implementation. I wonder if the reason that Bethesda has managed success while keeping their engine fairly public is because it's so shit.
Yeah. It sounds like a joke, but yeah. Why would you steal this?
Nobody is stealing it. But at the same time, like, their community loves the ability to mod, so they are willing to put up with all of the ways the engine lets them down in game for the ability to mod it later. It's an interesting path to success.
This is the interesting part of the Bethesda engine, is the good part isn't the engine itself. The good part of the Bethesda engine is the community and the philosophy around it. It's not the actual thing, and you can't steal a philosophy. That's just something that builds up over time and that we all become a part of as we develop a culture.
Yeah.
So it's unstealable, just because it's so crap.
Yeah. It does things that you just don't expect it to do. And so when you have a mod that kind of dives in with that, it's like, all right, yeah, it's very, but you could not tell the difference between, is this a mod or is it not a mod? You know,
it's a really simple one, but when we're doing game design, when we're doing game development, when we're doing code of any kind, we tend to establish like ranges that our program's going to work in. You know, so we have like big number ranges, and we'll say, okay, this stat runs from 0 to 100 or whatever. Why can you break it and do 15,000 in Morrowind? Why can I do that for acrobatics? That's stupid. But I think it's in some ways indicative of the lack of care and therefore joy that you get from this, because you can really mess it up in a good way. Whereas we're more likely to put constraints on our modders. We're more likely to have that language put in place that they're going to have to work with and work around. And weirdly, a game like The Witcher 3 or Cyberpunk, I don't want to mod them. They're too refined as experiences in and of themselves. And also, and this is a weird one, the protagonist is voiced. I don't want all of a sudden someone making a new quest line and Geralt's not talking in it. You know, it just feels odd. Whereas that sandboxy nature of Skyrim, not Fallout 4, but Skyrim, Oblivion, Fallout 3, New Vegas, none of your characters having voices. And also the story being so optional, I think it makes a huge difference, because someone sets up a live another life mod in The Witcher, it doesn't make sense. Our entire character arc is pushing forward. In Skyrim, we don't have to at all, if we don't want to. In Cyberpunk, our entire thing is getting this geezer out of our head. And if we're not focusing on that because we want to go and play off in the modded area, it just feels weird. It's like, it doesn't feel thematically right. So what makes Bethesda games so good to mod is a mishmash of different things. It's the goofiness of the engine. It's the way that it inspires player agency. It's the way that the storyline, for some reason, actually isn't that important. It's the jankiness. It's a long-standing community. It's a whole bunch of stuff that just makes it so unique.
Yeah, I'm partial to the aesthetics. I mean, I just, you know, unless it's like a gameplay that I am specifically doing, like, you know, the one where it's a survival mode. You know, it does not have a campsite in game. So I got a mod that lets me build a campsite. And I thought that was kind of immersive with the style that, you know, you're playing. So I got that mod. And then I said, hey, you know, since I'm only going to really be looking forward to furs, let me get a mod that has various different types of furs. And so it was like, there was nothing that was helping me play the game necessarily, like be over leveled for it. It was just something that I kind of mixed into it, because I figured everybody in the world is going to have to be playing this survival mode, everybody in this Skyrim version. So everybody's going to be wearing furs. And I thought it kind of worked in that. And of course, I have my really big trees. Got to have those. So
Well, but go back to when Skyrim came out. The survival didn't exist. Survival was a mod. I always called it Frostpunk. That's a game though. There was a mod called something like Frostpunk. It's like Frostland or something. But it gave you the hypothermic effects. It gave you can't go in the cold water without getting the hell out of there quickly. You had to carry a torch around just to maintain that sort of ambient level of heat. Going into deep cold caves was almost always a bad idea if your person wasn't in tip-top condition. And then there's a secondary mod that gave you cloaks. And big cloaks that then linked into that mod, and then that mod made your character feel better in that cold weather. And then someone made a mod to have Helgen reborn to rebuild that town from the start. And I think all of these have been incorporated either into the game as it is, the survival stuff. And I believe the Rebuild Helgen mod then became one of the featured mods of Bethesda. So one of the ones that gets the thumbs up from them and is available on consoles and in the Creation Club. Yeah.
Or Creator Club. Yeah, you're right.
Something like that,
Something.
yeah. I said both.
Put it in the comments.
I think, yeah, that idea that Bethesda has, and Larian has embraced it now too with Baldur's Gate 3, that like approved mod list that is accessible through the game. You can just browse the library of mods that they've okayed and now is available on console. That is an exceptional feature. That's wonderful, because you still have the base game. You can turn all of those off, play the base game whenever you want, and then when you reach that point where you're like, all right, I think I've pretty much exhausted my experience with the base game. Let's see what else we can get into. Or maybe you don't even want to do that. Maybe you're like, you know what, there's things I don't like about the base game, but I want to feel the experience of the rest of the story. Maybe not the way I was supposed to play the base game. So let's see what mods there are to just kind of get me through the story to the parts of the game that I actually like and bypass the parts I didn't really enjoy. I think that's a great philosophy for any studio to have.
I'd love to see that. Something like that with more games. Have a maybe in the options menu, sort of New Game Plus when you get there. Or you could do it from the very beginning, of course, because actually why gatekeep it behind New Game Plus? But when you start a game, there's a little sub menu saying, you know, what's the word? Curated mod lists. And you could have just slightly different experiences. You could select one of them to sort of redo the game. And the studio could go out there, find mods that work together, get the permission of the owners, fucking pay them. Because at that point, you're actually doing something. Not charge the users for this. No. This can come out of your revenue. This is fine. Because we need to give something back to the modding community if we're going to do that and officialize them in some way.
I think a lot of the ones that are in the Creation Club are,
I think so.
They get a percentage.
Oh yeah, that wasn't a knock on Bethesda. That was because I think they were one of the ones who started to do it. I remember when they first started, it felt ugly because they were drifting just into the paid mods, which, should we be paying for mods? Probably, but the culture isn't there for it.
Right.
And I'm glad we don't, because there's so many of them. You don't know what the quality is going to be. You don't know really what they are. Should we be for the good ones? Yeah, probably. But I just don't think we're at that point. I don't think we will honestly ever really be at that point, just by the nature of the almost, it's not open source per se, but the almost open source nature of what we're doing. If 100 of the best modders go and become paid modders for Bethesda, well, 100 new ones will pop up.
Yeah.
And they'll be very eager to take those slots behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've highlighted exactly why we're not ready for that step with the modding community, and it's just because there is such a wide variety in terms of the quality of mods that I don't want to pay for a mod, play for like 45 seconds and be like, oh, this is not for me at all, and then try to figure out how to get refunded for an independent developer's mod like that.
If you gave me
the infrastructure in place,
if you gave me the possibility to pay for that, like a €10 or $10 whatever for Baldur's Gate 3, that stupid game, to have a curated list of mods. And it was going to be, I click new game and it says, do you want this experience? Do you want the vanilla plus experience? Do you want the this world is weird experience? Do you want these? Do you want Baldur's Gate Ghost sci-fi experience? Whatever. I'd be happy to pay sort of like, €10, $10 or whatever for those sets curated within the game, as long as the money went to the people who actually made them. The studio can take a bit, obviously, they're curating it, and in the end, they're going to. But if the majority is going to the people who've made it, I'd be more than happy to. As long as they were curated, well-balanced, I was never going to have to do any debugging, troubleshooting, nothing like that. This has to work. And I think that could be actually genuinely interesting.
Because you have Nexus mods, you have, the integrated creation club type stuff. But for instance, let's say you have Steam and you can actually access the list of mods of your game from Steam.
Steam Workshop.
Right, exactly. But it would have your actual mod on there and give you the option to tip them as an independent gesture outside after your experience.
I think you can on Nexus, can't you?
Well, again, Nexus is very different because it's
I haven't used it in a long time.
Yeah, you're accessing it separately, and you have your list of downloads, and you have your list of mods that may or may not even be installed, and you have to I don't really remember, because I use Nexus all the time. I don't remember seeing a tip portion of that unless you go to their actual. You know what it is? I think is that when you have that mod and you go to their actual website, you have the option to tip. But
probably more of that. Yeah, I can't see anything that says tip.
But it would just kind of be neat that, like you said, in the workshop or whatever, that you actually have that mod. Like, for instance, KOTOR 2, you kind of... That is the perfect one, because they actually have, like, the unreleased material, the actual patches. You can just click yes, 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 and it automatically, Steam patches it for you with those mods installed. And it would be great to have, like, a little addendum there, like, after your experience, if you wanted to actually tip them. It'd be great.
I think the way that I would like to see it done is you go in the game, you click new game, you get this drop-down menu, and you say, okay, I want the vanilla plus experience. This is going to do various simple things, maybe some few extra spells, maybe some slight rebalancing, maybe a few extra quests here and there, relatively small things. And you could pay whatever money to have this selection of mods curated for you. But also keep the mods on the Nexus. And if you want to go and set them up yourself and debug them yourself and whatever, then you can go and do it yourself, and you can give a tip if you'd like. So you're giving the possibility for people who don't really understand modding to be able to play it. And almost, it's a bit like going and get your music on Spotify as opposed to just going and stealing your music online. I don't even know how to do that anymore, so I'll pay for Spotify. And you'll pay for the convenience of just having that. And it might be a nice way for some modders to actually make a bit of money from what they do, because they do some incredible stuff, whilst also not violating the principle that this is a public thing. It's a labor of love, it's affection, so that people like myself, who are a bit lazier and don't really know quite what to do, I can pay the tenner. But then someone who's much more into the community and wants to do their own thing, they can go and download all the mods individually, and they can tip if they want, they can not tip if they don't. But you should tip.
A lot of us, back in the day with like Warcraft and when we created our own maps and things, had a little bit more experience of actually going into files and doing that kind of stuff. So it seemed a little bit more natural. I know when MMOs like EverQuest and, for me, Galaxy, Star Wars Galaxies, it was almost like you were modding inside the game while you were playing it, because it was an open world thing, but as you had like a house, or you built this or you built that, a shop or whatever, you could place assets down and you'd have to code where they were going to be. You couldn't just like move your mouse around and whatever. You had to actually say, you had to like put it in the framework of the grid of the house or whatever, and then you'd have to say, I want it here, 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 and then hit enter so that you can actually place it. It's very it was very an old school way of doing things, but that's very similar to actually how modding actually works. And then when you release it, it's actually in that structure and that whatever. So you could modify it yourself, of course, outside of that. But again, it's one of those, like, back then it was more of a natural transition to say, oh, this is just a mod. It's somebody's already created this stuff. I can just kind of plop it in here. It's just easier that way. But we did have some experience doing that. So it was a little bit more accessible for us. So modding came more naturally back then. So I can see the transition going into, like, let's just give them the construction kit because they're going to go in there and try to do it. And we don't want to frustrate everybody. But, you know, Bethesda doing that, and as we keep referring to Bethesda, but they seem to have embraced it more openly than a lot of the other developers did at that time. So
it's the iconic modding company. It's just the one that you think of. And yeah, they're not the only ones, because we mentioned earlier, DayZ, we mentioned Stanley Parable. I think Portal was a mod. No, I think Portal was a an asset test, not a mod. Counter-Strike. And if we go back, then I believe Unreal Tournament came from Quake. So, and Doom itself, I think, was quite heavily modded too. So there's a long, proud tradition of modding. I think just Bethesda was the point when it felt a bit more like it was open to just about everyone. If you could navigate a file system, you didn't really need to do much more than that and just be careful. And that was it. Whereas it always felt, whether or not it's the case, it always felt that things like Doom modding was a lot more awkward, a lot more difficult.
Yeah, Carmike and all of them were geniuses at doing what they did. I mean, it was hard to play those games back then because we just didn't have the system set up for it. They look simple now, but you had to have a good rig to play them. So not very many of us played it. It's like, it's kind of funny. Oh, the Doom just came out, the Dark Ages, which I've been playing it. It's a lot of fun, but it's very forgiving. It's definitely not like Eternal. Eternal's much harder. But back in the old school days, like, oh yeah, I'm an old school Doom player. You may have played it old school, but hardly any of us played it when it came out because it was just nobody had a rig for it. That and Quake especially. Quake was, I didn't touch Quake for years after.
I think I played Quake in the early 2000s, which it came out a few years before that. Even Wolfenstein, I didn't play that when it came out. Had to wait a few years, and like you said, you look back and it's actually really primitive. But of course it is.
Wolfenstein and Doom are all kind of in the same universe, believe it or not. The
lore episode.
The Slayer is from Doom is the grandson of the hero from Wolfenstein.
If you disagree with Legion, put that in the comments too. This comment's going to be really long and psychotic.
How dare you?
How dare I? How dare you? Well, do you have any favorite mods or iconic mods that you look back at and you see that maybe it's just one that you loved, maybe it's one that just went on to be very, very important? Is there one that for you stands out?
It's always my trees. I love my trees, my really big trees. I can't tell you how much of a difference it makes. I just don't feel like I'm in Skyrim without that mod. So
that's awesome. Actually, I love
it's
that.
funny because like the natural trees are, they're pretty good size, but if you double them, it's like I really do feel like I'm in Skyrim now because it feels like that whole like redwood forest type thing. It's like this is an enchanted forest, and I've been to sequoias, and
I'm gonna drive out to those national parks, look around at all the redwoods, and be like, this place feels modded.
Sequoia, Yosemite, been there a few times, taking the kids and stuff. And my wife, she was born in California, and she went there every year till she was about 18 or so. And yeah, it's an amazing place. And so when I see Skyrim now, I have to think that massive enchanted area, and that gives it to me. So it sounds kind of dumb and corny, and I bring it up all the time, but that really big trees, that's my mod. That's my favorite mod. Yeah.
Quietest heckles.
I think for me the mod that like stands out, and I don't know if it really qualifies as a mod, but it's the Brutal Mario games. So people took the Super Mario, or what is it? It's one of the SNES games, Super Mario World, and they took that engine and they started building their own levels within that engine, and then that still persists. So you can find people running mods of the Super Mario World engine on Twitch. There are dozens of channels who are still doing it regularly, and it's kept that game relevant. But I think that's where the Mario Maker game came from. Like that idea, Nintendo just kind of embraced. Well, I don't want to give them too much credit because Nintendo does a lot of weird stuff with their IP, and this very much felt like other people are doing fun stuff with our IP. Let's steal that back.
Nice.
And so that's what Mario Maker and Mario Maker 2 feel like to me. But those games are so. They took what modders were doing and made it accessible for everybody, and I think that's why those games work. And I think those games are wonderful. So I think the fact that people were able to mod the Super Mario World engine to create excessively challenging levels inspired the just sadistic behavior we saw in Super Mario Maker, and has made for some of the most entertaining videos on YouTube.
Nice. I think for me, the most important mods are probably Team Fortress and Counter-Strike. Just in terms of what they became, they still exist, which is wild. But for me, the biggest one that I remember thinking like, oh wow, this is something, was the Morrowind Distant Views, which was the very first time you could lift away the fog wall that was around you and actually see the world that was off in the distance. I just remember, like, I could never run it. Like, not a chance. But, like, seeing screenshots, because this would have been pre-YouTube, I think. So seeing screenshots of it running on people's machines, and they're standing somewhere in the western corner of the map, and they can see Vivek right down in the south, just in the distance, over the mountains and the hills. And there was a moment of realization as a kid of, holy hell, we can do that with modding. You know, we can alter this game in that way and open up this world. But also, it felt like an indicator of what we were probably going to be seeing in a few years' time, which is ultimately what we did. Because I remember that as being a big, interesting point for Oblivion, was realizing when it first came out, oh goodness, you can see the white gold tower from anywhere. Okay, that's something. And you can see, oh wow. So I think it was one of those first mods that I saw, which really made me think about actually how games were developing, and also just blew me away just as an idea. At the time, I didn't realize that even the person who made the mod was probably running it at like 2 FPS. You know, and there's a reason it was screenshots, because I don't think anyone's rig could run it at the time.
Yeah,
but that was something.
Seeing the tower from everywhere was like, I always felt like Oblivion just felt smaller to me, just because of all that.
It does.
Yeah.
It's also heavily centralized in that way, though. And the way that nothing's blocked off. Morrowind, we talked before, you got to go around the damn island to get where you want to go. Oblivion, you want to go there, you can go there. That's a good thing, and it's a bad thing. And I think they went a long way with Skyrim to fixing that, by giving you these large obstacles and mountains that you had to really work your way around, as opposed to just beeline.
Yeah, I think mentally it made sense. Like, oh, I can see the big city from anywhere, but then you go to the big city, it's not that big. It's supposed to be like the center of the empire.
They did help their illusion by having it broken into the separate areas, but the number of NPCs was always the giveaway. When you walk through and there's about 6 people in the whole town, or in the whole quarter, or 8, whatever it is. Yeah, that always felt a bit odd. Even at the time, that felt odd.
I thought you were going to say the mod that lets you bring Aerith back.
Cue the sad music and the ending.
Moment of silence.
R.I.P.
A few moments later.
Yeah, I'm big on lighting. So if you know,
Legion's like, fuck you, I had more to say.
Yeah.
Also, lights.
Yeah. That's one thing I've done in Morrowind, though. In the OpenMW engine, I've gotten a mod. I only have a couple mods for that one because it doesn't really need much. But yeah, one of them is a lighting. And what it did is it basically took the existing lighting and didn't oversaturate them. They actually just gave them the color that they were supposed to have. So like a lot of the windows that were green look green at night. Like there's like a glow, like from the outside, from the inside pushing out almost. And it's that either green or blue or whatever color. And it's just really gorgeous. Gives the nighttime atmosphere, with all the browns that are in that game, gives it a nice sense of hominess.
Yeah, a good lighting mod actually can do massive amounts. And that's one of those nice little details in the game that have been overlooked, that the modding community is so damn good at fixing up. I think when as a dev, you look at this game engine for 5 years, you're working for 5 years, sometimes there's small things that slip on by, or you think maybe that's not worth the time. But the modding community, by definition, pretty much loves what they're doing. They love the game. So those small, finicky details, they're more than happy to go and fix them up for you, which is how you end up with them making like the higher resolution gold coins for Skyrim. A thing we demonstrably don't need, but they want to. Also, notice, I ask everyone, what's your favorite mod? Legion has to have 2.
Yeah.
God.
Well, it's not a favorite
Wrap
mod.
it up.
It's just lighting.
Wrap it up.
I like lighting. Yeah.
Oh, it's so sweet. I like lighting and I like trees.
Did you ever install that mod, Banana, for the Baldur's Gate 3, the one where you can be a Koatoa, like a fish?
Oh God.
I've seen it. I haven't installed it myself. This is gonna sound ridiculous. I have just enjoyed the vanilla game way too much. Like I put some mods on and have experienced like the absolute broken power fantasy from some of those mods where like you can add a feat every level. Okay, I am broken by level 3. That's interesting. And then all those ones that kind of like streamline the experience. So like I was reading about 2 of them that pair very well. There's one that lets you break the party limit so you can have everybody walking around at the same time, and then a paired mod to go with that resets the party limit to 4 when you enter combat, so you still get that original combat experience, but you don't have to worry about, oh, this person wasn't there so I missed out on this conversation or something like that. And you get the banter, which is the best part about that combination, is everybody is talking to each other and the game feels more full because of it, because there's long stretches where you don't have any banter in Baldur's Gate 3 when you're just wandering around the wilderness. So having everybody in your group and the ability to proc that banter much more frequently, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Me and Banana have talked about the distaste of critical failures when your DC is lower than all your advantages. This should not be a failure. Well, difficulty check. That's what it stands for. The difficulty check. So
yeah, it's essentially the number you have to roll.
Yeah. So if it's like a 3,
and when you have bonuses beyond that, it's so frustrating.
Can I have 8 bonuses? Yeah. Well, this doesn't make sense. So I just don't like critical failures in that sense. And so if there was a mod that would help me remove that, I'm pretty sure there is, but that would be the one thing I would think for that game. But the Karatoa one, it's like basically you run around as a fish person, and then romancing people is just hilarious.
The critical failure thing, it's supposed, if I'm right, it's supposed to be you can be the best athlete in the world, but you can still slip in the bathtub. It's that thing, right? There's always supposed to be a possibility, no matter how good you are at something.
Yeah, not when you have an advantage throwing 2 dice and it happens both times.
Yeah. but in that situation, that is slipping in the bath, because that's like a 1 in 400 chance or something. Whereas if it's just, the 1d20, that feels right.
Not if you're me.
Yeah.
So I think the one of the things that we talked about with this ability check thing and this critical failures, it is very much for the sake of a video game to have these critical failures in, because this is not in the tabletop D&D.
The critical failures are normally the players. Continue.
Yes, exactly. I am the critical fail. So this is one of those things that, like, in the video game, because it's kind of holding your hand and determining what you can and can't do in the game, there's not as much capacity for you to completely fuck the campaign.
Right.
You could do that very easily in a D&D campaign. Baldur's Gate 3, they were like, well, we don't want you to break the game, but we do want to derail your ideal campaign occasionally. And the way they go about doing that is these critical failures. And then they have the inspiration system, so you don't, if it's something like you're dead set on, you're like, no, I really want to pass this one, I could use inspiration.
I remember a friend of mine, it's probably a topic for another day, save scumming, but I remember a friend of mine talking about Baldur's Gate, and he was saying it's one of the games where save scumming is a very appropriate thing to do.
That was me. I said that.
No, I said friend.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Ew.
That
I think it actually was you.
Anyway, I appreciate everybody being here. We talked about mods. Banana talked about his favorite mod, and Com talked about his favorite friends, which are not us. So
I introduce you one.
In order to be the favorite, you have to be on the list.
Oh, Jesus. End it now. End it now. It's getting dark.
Put your favorite mod in the comments, and we'll check you guys later. Bye-bye.
Go comment on your favorite mod.
Yeah.